Hi guys, we thanks so much for joining today's webinar. We're going to get started now. My name is Cumbrai and I'm part of the team here at Oxford Professional Education. And just a bit of housekeeping, just to note that this webinar is being recorded. And today we've got a really interesting webinar hosted by Robyn, of course. And she'll be covering getting the most out of Gemini and Claude. So Robyn, I'll hand over to you now to start.
Thank you very much for the glorious intro, as always. And so I wanted to bring these two tools together because they are my most requested. So these are the two tools that people are trying out and moving to after everybody has kind of jumped ship out of ChatGPT. We've done a couple of sessions on why that was and the kind of reasoning that people are doing that. And for me, it boils down to the one sentence that I've actually labeled this session, which is from using AI to actually working with it. There are so many platforms now that give us the opportunity to truly engage and truly connect with the way that AI can support us. We are moving past that prompt to kind of response, kind of outcome, and moving to something that sits alongside, sits in, or sits kind of adjacent to our ecosystem. As people were initially kind of joining, I was asking if anybody currently uses Claude or Gemini currently. So you can kind of let me know in the chat. If you have those kind of processes or those kind of platforms available to you, you are more than welcome to work alongside me today as I go through some various kind of things that we're going to try out together. As always, I'm going to give you a caveat though. Any of the data that you put into those platforms, I need you to own, I need you to have access to, and you understand how the platforms utilize data. So maybe just for today, you don't put in client data or your own organizational data as we work together, just to make sure that you are kind of compliant, especially as we know that there have been GDPR changes kind of over the past couple of weeks that we have to now be really careful with kind of data sharing and compliance. So I promise nothing else in the webinar is that serious. But if you want to work alongside me today in Gemini and Claude, you're more than welcome to. But the data you use, make sure that you own it and you are able to process it. So I didn't want to just give you a kind of feature walkthrough today. I actually wanted to give you things that you could try straight away. And realistically, I want you to understand what these tools really offer and what they actually are and why they differ. So a lot of these platforms fall under something called large language models, or they are called something GBT. And that is because a lot of the technology that sits underneath them is actually pretty much the same. But the different platforms offer different boundaries, different features, and different purposes for that same type of technology to do the thing it does within that platform. So even though these are AI, natural language processing models, they are LLMs, they all have a difference and they often actually now work together. You need more than just one to actually move forward. So we have 3 live demos built in today. So I'll show you the tools working and you'll have takeaways on how to not only improve using Claude and Gemini, but also other AI tools, because the things that we talk about, you can implement across anything that you have to prompt. Okay. So why do most professionals plateau with AI? There's a huge discontentment with kind of AI use and what people expect AI to do, kind of a little bit of like magic at the moment, to actually what they're experiencing and the outputs that they are actually experiencing. But there's kind of 3 main kind of areas as to the reason why that is happening. So who uses an AI tool every day? Who uses it once a week? Let me know. Because realistically, even though we have access to these great tools, we are barely scratching the surface at the moment. And there's a few reasons for that. They came into our world with no handbook or guidebook for us to kind of understand. They came into our workplace not realistically, because they were implemented in the right kind of way, they came into our workplace purely because all of a sudden the platforms that we have used daily, we suddenly had AI-powered processes, AI-powered this, that, the other. And actually, we now need to stop using them in the most obvious way, the way that we've used them since the dawn of ChatGPT into our world, and actually move forward into what they were built for and the capabilities they now have, rather than when we first gained access to them. So we often use AI reactively, yeah? It's a search engine replacement. We give it a question, we ask for something out, but realistically, there's no consistency or structure to that. We just turn to it. There's no plan. We just go, I bet ChatGPT, I bet Claude will have an answer to this. So we go and ask it. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons that we start to plateau, because we're not actually planning our use. We are just using it to fix a problem in the moment. Yeah. We're also quite vague still in what we ask it. And that is purely because of understanding how the system potentially works. And because we often react reactively. I just had to make sure that that sentence was correct, that we do things very quickly. Yeah. We're like a very quick question rather than building in the context and the nuance that it actually needs. And we realistically never go beyond the initial need that we implement these platforms. We never open up the settings. We never create a project. We don't find the features that make these tools genuinely useful over time. So this disenchantment, this pull away from AI use, it's not actually the tool's problem. The approach to how we do things is. And I'm more than happy for you to challenge me on that. If you don't agree, just let me know. Yeah. So I kind of want to always circle back to our foundational understanding of what AI tools are. People are still surprised when I tell them that it is a probability matrix. It takes all of the information we have ever fed it or it has had access to. It positions itself and understanding the connectivity and the patterns within that data. So when we ask it a question, it basically matches. It matches our input to an output. It doesn't try very hard. So if we all opened up ChatGPT and asked it for a LinkedIn post about AI implementation, we would all get rocket emojis, staccato kind of information, and we would all be the most probable voice in that opportunity. They are pattern completion systems. They are trained on vast amounts of data we have fed it. Do you know what the largest data pools that go into AI training currently are? Does anyone have a clue of that? Reddit and Wikipedia. Now, does that change your confidence in some of the outputs that AI tools create? They are reasoning partners. They are designed for us to use them as a back and forth. They are context sensitive. So we have to provide, we have to give so that they can understand what we actually require moving forward. And the first output that we get is removing us from a blank page. It is never a final answer. What it is not, though, what it truly isn't, is not a search engine. So many AI platforms still have a knowledge cutoff. They are not connected to the internet. So the data that they are trained on is not what is going on now. So if you asked it things about the World Cup, it could talk about things from X amount of days, X amount of weeks before, but it wouldn't be as up to date as you would need it to be. They are fact-checked databases, but they can be confidently wrong, because if they match the pattern in the wrong kind of way, we use the wrong words to describe something, the output will not be correct. Yeah. They are not mind readers. They can only work with what we give them or what they have had access to. Often we ask them as though they had the same experience in life that we have had. Or we expect them to see the world in the way that we do. And it just doesn't work that way. And they are not one-shot tools. And what I mean by that is that they are designed for us to work with them. Yeah, they are designed for us to keep going, keep asking, keep refining. We are not meant to use the most probable answer it kicks out as our initial response. Yeah. So let's now look at Claude versus Gemini. Yeah. And when I run sessions like this, one of the biggest questions I often get is, what should I use? And I'm like, well, that's not as simple as me going or telling you what I use. And my honest reaction to that is the wrong question. You should not be asking me what tool you should use unless you can tell me more. Because realistically, AI tools like this, like Claude and Gemini, they are not reflections of each other. They are not alternatives to each other, but they get lumped into the same kind of bracket. Because AI platforms, like our normal tech platforms, they are all built around a different problem. Yeah, does that make sense? They are built around a different problem, and they're designed to give us different types of outputs, and we're designed to use them in different ways. So I'm going to talk to you now about Claude. So Claude was built by Anthropic, and their core focus has been on safety and on producing a model that resonates carefully. Has everyone seen that we suddenly don't have access to Fable 5, their latest model? Yeah. And what that translates to in practice is it's genuinely good at depth. It's really good at synthesizing long documents, complex instructions, nuanced writing tasks. So if we give Claude a 4,000 word brief, I don't suggest that you do, but you can, and ask it to find the kind of weakest arguments in section whatever 3, it can do that for you. If you give it a set of 10 rules to follow while drafting something, it will hold all of those 10 requirements at once and won't quietly drop things like ChatGPT does. And that precision with instructions is where it consistently outperforms. Whereas Gemini, for example, was built by Google. Yeah, it's in Google's DNA. And it's kind of the purpose is to search data and add productivity. And that is what kind of Google believes supports businesses. So Gemini is optimized for breadth. Yeah, pulling information from multiple sources, integrating with tools that we already use, and staying connected to what is happening in the world right now. If your work is happening inside Gmail, Docs, Drive, or Sheets, Gemini is the one that naturally fits into that environment. So there's also a practical difference on web access. So Claude by default does not have live web access. It is working entirely from its training data and whatever we paste into the conversation. It's not a flaw. Yeah, it's not a flaw. It just means that the responses are focused and contained. And they do not drift into things like recent news or half relevant search results. It forces us to think about what context we need to feed it. And we can add web search though. It doesn't omit it, it's just not its natural behavior. So Gemini has instead web access switched on by default. Yeah, it is switched on. So every query is informed by live search results. That is valuable when we need current information, recent policy changes, latest market data, what happened last week, all of those kind of things. It's less valuable when you want the tool to reason carefully from a specific set of information, because it does pull in things from outside of source material and our bubble of context. Neither approach is better, they're just different. They suit different tasks. Yeah. So they also live in separate places. So Claude lives at Claude.ai. It is a standalone tool. It does not rely on other software. But Gemini is embedded. So it is in Gmail as a drafting assistant. It is in Google Docs as a writing companion. It's in Drive as a search and summary tool. And that means that for people who work in Google Workspace, which is realistically quite a lot of organizations, Gemini is available where your work is already happening. Yeah. Now, a difference that you may not consider is tone. Yeah. So it may sound quite trivial that I bring this up as we compare these two, but realistically, if you are using these tools to help you write, the default tone, if you're not willing to go in and set up anything, matters a lot, actually. So Claude tends to produce responses that are direct. They are reasonably concise. It doesn't pad out. Yeah. It does not open every response with certainly or a paragraph about how great your question is, like other platforms. It follows the instruction and delivers the output. But if you do tell it to be critical, it is critical. If you tell it to be brief, it is brief. Bearing in mind, that is the most probable version of brief or the most probable version of critical. Yeah. Gemini tends towards comprehensiveness. It wants to give you all of the response, all of the answer in a research content that is actually generally really useful, more coverage, more angles. But in a writing context, it can mean that the first draft needs more editing because it's tried to bring everything, including the kitchen sink, into the kind of response rather than the most important thing. Again, neither is wrong, but knowing the difference saves you time when you are choosing which tool to start for a given task. So there's also a way that you can use these kind of together. And the workflow that tends to work well is that you can use Gemini when you need to find current information or when breadth of research is important, but we can move to Claude when that task becomes analytical. AI platforms are not necessarily competing for the same job. Just as we use normal tech in kind of sequence and we get more from that, we can do that with AI platforms. We don't have to commit to using just one. We just need to know how to kind of connect them together. So I'm going to just share very quickly this slide, but then I'm going to open up Claude to talk about it. So I'm going to kind of talk about 3 Claude features that most people have never used. And that is not me telling you that it's never been used. It is looking at the features and the kind of information that is available on AI use and Anthropic's own kind of response to utilizing kind of the various aspects of their own tools. So let's share Claude now while I talk you through. So it should have just changed to Claude. Perfect. So when most people use Claude, they open up a new chat, type in their question. Just type in a question. So write in a post on AI use in, I don't know why it's gone caps business. I should practice typing under pressure because I can't spell like when I try and do these demos. So what it is doing now is it's kind of going to create that for you. But what you can actually see is I have inputted a skill. Now, what this allows me to do is to run something through an automatic lens. So I'm not getting the most probable answer. And for you to create that, all you need to do is go into here, add skill. You can either kind of type in a skill, so you can have a kind of brand guidelines skill, you can have a learn skill, all of these kind of things you can just search in here. And that forces it to respond directly through that lens, omitting you having to share things all the time, ensuring that things are aligned with your brand, and ensuring that you are not getting the most probable outcome. It starts to allow us to use, like allow AI to work with us rather than just using it. Yeah. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is if you go into projects. So projects changes the probability of your outcome. A project is a persistent workspace that sits in the left sidebar of Claude. You can access it all the time there. and we create a space for a specific context. It could be a job, it could be a client, or a particular type of work. And inside that project, we do two things. So let's start a new project. We can give it something. So let's just put AI use implementation. Yeah, again, can't spell. And now what we need to do is tell it what we are trying to achieve. So what are we trying to achieve? A consistent set of responses to AI questions from within the organization. Yeah. So now we're going to create that project. So here, what I can do is I can add memory, I can add instructions, and I can add files. So that anything I ask, it's over here, that's why I'm like pointing over here. Anything I ask in this section here has to draw on everything that is contained within this space. So what we're starting to do is, it's really significant because we're giving it full levels of context to work through. So if you set up a project this week, what I want you to do is take some time to create specific instructions and type them in here, and allow Claude to show you the difference between a blank chat and an actual kind of fully nuanced, context-led space that it can generate with you within the project section. So that's the first thing I want you to do. Look at skills and then look at projects. That's going to really change the output. So what I want you to next do, if that isn't your thing, you just need all of Claude to do it all the same way all the time, is I want you to open up your settings here. Yeah. So what this allows us to do is, when we ask Claude to write something in a blank chat, not in a project space, it writes it naturally in Claude's voice. Yeah. So that by default is a capable, reasonably clear, professional voice, but it's not us. Yeah. So anything that we generate or anything that we ask for will be put through that version, that lens, that tone. So what we can actually do is start to create our custom style in here. So we go into our settings, and we go into our account. You can check here where you're logged in, which is something I always like to bring up here. And what I want you to do is go through and make sure that you are adding in as much information about yourself. What best describes your work? What should you be called? What instructions do you have for Claude? Yes, so it contains all of the previous kind of information from anything you've asked within that project space. It retains all of that knowledge. And what I want you to do here is go down to voice. So I want you to change your language if necessary, your style if necessary, your speed, and basically update the settings so that you're not getting the most probable version of Claude. This is great if you need to blanket change all of Claude. Projects are great if you need to be specific, for example, for different clients, different projects, different campaigns, for example. So what I want you to then think about doing is changing how it creates a response. You can go here, and what you can start it to do is ask it to do things like extended research. Yeah. So you can actually force it to change the way it will bring out a response. So if we ask it to research, it's going to change the way it works, the information it pulls, and the way it builds that outcome compared to a normal kind of communication. So the common thread across all of them is that we have to go beyond default behavior, out of the box behavior, just subscribing and using behavior. Yeah. So minimally, we do need to go into our settings, we change a mode, most people never do that. And what you'll start to see is the outputs and the use will start to raise, because you're not having to train it all the time. You're not having to sit with it all the time. It has these skills, projects, or settings that analyze and change the output for you. So that's the kind of first 3 kind of things that you can change in Claude. So let's have a look at, we're probably moving on to Gemini. Yes, we are. So the next slide is all about how 3 things that basically people don't do in Gemini. Yeah. And these are gems, Notebook LM, and live voice search with screen sharing. These are 3 things that people do not use, and they definitely should when it comes to building and utilizing workflow processes with Gemini. So now let's get let's step Gemini up to the stage. So let's share this tab. So the last slide was all about going deeper with Claude, doing things that are outside of static use, default use. And this is about doing the same with Gemini. So the same principle lives here, and I promise you it lives within any AI platform use. Whichever platform, we could just change the title and kind of do these same things. So the people getting the most out of these kind of platforms, they're not better at using it. They just found parts of the tool that most people haven't. So the first thing I kind of want to talk to you about is gems. Yeah. So gems omit that problem that we all have by reacting reactively when it comes to AI use. So we generally open up Gemini, we type a question, we get an answer, and then we leave. Yeah. Every session starts blank, and every session requires them to explain what they need, what the tone is, what context is relevant. It's the same problem with Claude. If you're not using projects, you're starting from 0 every single time. So gem is how Gemini solves that. A gem is a saved custom version of Gemini that we configure ourselves. We give it a name, we write a description of what it is for, and then we create a set of instructions that define how it behaves. Those instructions can cover anything, what role it plays, what it focuses on, what it avoids, how it formats responses, what tone it uses, what assumptions it should make about you and your work. So once we've kind of saved a gem, it lives in the left kind of sidebar on these kind of section here. And we open it, and then it's already preloaded. So basically it's its version of Claude projects. And this is just a way for us to have these filters that automatically work without us moving, without us having to do it every single time. Now, what I want to show you is one of the features that blows me away of Gemini every single time, and that is Notebook LM. Has anyone moved into trying Notebook LM yet? Has anyone kind of gone in and had a look at the opportunity here? So this is a Gemini-led Google product, and it uses Gemini to be able to kind of create a great outcome. So the problem it solves is a really specific one. So when we use a generative AI tool, we ask it a question, it draws on everything it was trained on. So that's that's useful for general knowledge, but it creates a problem when what we actually need it to do is kind of for the tool to stay inside a specific set of material. For example, our company's research, our clients' documents, a policy paper, a set of transcripts from interviews that we have conducted. So with a general AI, we can post kind of documents in, but there's no guarantee it will not pull outside knowledge in. Notebook LM works completely different. So what that means is that we can make sure our answers are traceable, and we can create wonderful different outputs. So I've got a kind of fake document that I have created. which is all about AI adoption for HR. Doesn't sound very exciting, does it, realistically? But what I'm going to do is I am going to add my sources in here. Just going to have, it's not connecting to my Google Drive, so I'm just going to download it as a document. There we go. Okay, so we basically then add our sources. So I'm going to upload a file. I'm going to put this one in here. Now, what I'm basically doing is giving it the full context, the bubble, the boundaries, the guardrails. Yeah. So in my chat now, I can request information about that document. Only that document. So if you are working with a client and you have their branding brief, all of their information, you could put all of that into here and allows you to synthesize. If you are working as a student, you could put all of your module information into here, and then it'll help you revise by creating an audio overview, a slide deck of the information, a mind map. So what it does is it uses AI to synthesize the data that you need it to within a confined space. So if I just go into mind map, for example, it's going to generate that based on the one resource I have given it. It'll just take a few seconds to do that. And it also prompts you to kind of, this is what the kind of themes and information it has found. Do we want to kind of let them know? Like, do we want to kind of have access to that information? So when I then start to kind of discuss and ask questions here, I can ask it to give me the main themes. It's going to look for all of that information. It's going to do the analysis of the space, this notebook, as though it's reading all back through the information. Yeah. And it's going to give me the theme summaries of all of the information there. What it does do is if you have multiple documents, it gives you the exact place it pulled it from. Yeah. So if you are working with a client for a really long time and all of a sudden you need to kind of go back and find something from 2017, you can ask your notebook LM powered by Gemini to go back through and find that for you, allowing you to cite and understand the information moving forward. So it's quite good. It's also created me a mind map, which is incredibly wonderful. So it's kind of taken the theme, broken it down for me, broken it down again, broken it down again. So I can have it in whatever way I need to consume that information, or whatever way I need to share that information. Yeah. So that's just another great way to kind of utilize something that not many people are logging into at the moment. So the next one I kind of want to talk to you about is something called live voice with screen sharing. So it's in the Gemini mobile app, not the web version. So you have to do it on the app on your phone. So when you open the app, there is a live icon. It looks slightly different to the standard chat, and you can tap it. So then you can share your screen. Do that, and what your class is now live, and real-time conversation with Gemini where it can see everything on your screen. You can then talk to it like you would talk to a colleague, yeah, who is sitting next to you at the same screen. Point at something on a document and say, what does this clause mean? Talk through a spreadsheet out loud and ask it to explain what the numbers are telling you. Walk through a presentation slide by slide and ask it whether the argument is landing. Look at an email you have received and ask it how you should respond. And it processes what it sees, yeah, and what I say simultaneously, and responds conversationally in real time. And it's like a back and forth real conversation. So it's really good when you're trying to understand something while looking at it. And this is what it looks like. So you can be sharing things directly. You can ask it a question such as which of these could be a coriander kind of substitute. What is this outside? What bug is this? What plant is this? But also from a business point of view, you can do things like, what does this mean? What am I being shown here? What do I need to do? Yeah. If you're in a presentation or a webinar, you can have it open, they can listen, and it synthesizes the talk for you. So it's a really great thing to try out, and it's something that a lot of people have access to, but they're not utilizing. Now, I spoke a lot in quite a few sessions about the fact that a strong prompt changes the output of your kind of use, or the kind of use of the output. And I want to come back to the RTCF, which is the minimum amount of information that you need to give to a kind of any prompt. Yeah. Asking it just to write you a LinkedIn post about AI is not enough anymore. We know that. We see other people doing that on our LinkedIn feeds, and we generally switch off. And you're starting to see the kind of bringing in of the kind of language that we see online as more and more people use AI. So when you're talking to any AI system, minimally, you need to give it your role, your task, your context, and your format. Yeah. And realistically, that is because if we go into, let's go into the next slide. So if I ask, create me a LinkedIn post about AI use. Yeah. So what we're going to get here is a very kind of output. I have given it very, very basic information. So we'll go with the founders left behind. We will, it's forcing me to give it more here. So what's it for? Yeah, as me. But instead here, I'm going to add its role. So I'm going to say the role is as of me, the agency founder. We're going to give our kind of task. The task is the LinkedIn post with the call to action to book a call potentially. We're going to give it the context. So the context is for founders left behind. And then we're also going to give it kind of the format. So it's not just a LinkedIn post. I like kind of make sure the post is a narrative and is engaging. Please also add more words than that kind of prompt, but we're looking at the bare minimum for speed. And what you'll start to see is this is now a version that is utilizing the nuances and the context of the various things that we are kind of looking to create. Yeah. You can also then add in your skills. So I do have a Everburn content reviewer. So I can then ask it to review this and give me pointers on how to improve. So it's using a skill I have already added in. And it's actually giving me an alignment of my ideal client, what is working, what isn't, what's falling flat. And then it's going to suggest a rewrite for me. How much better is that than purely just letting it give me the most probable output? Yeah. So it's given me rewrite suggestions, and I can say yes or no. So rewrite this. And then it will take what it created with my kind of RTCF and then actually align it with things I've created. So you could create a skill that you then run things through just to double check and further improved. So then it's giving me the rewrite. Yeah. So what I want to kind of now talk to you about is techniques that consistently improve your output, regardless if it's Claude or Gemini or any kind of tool. What I want you to start doing is I want you to start asking it to think before it answers. Before you draft this, list the 3 most things to get right. So what you're forcing it to do is prove to you it understands what you're asking. And then you can double check if the output, the focus, the core reason it has suggested is actually correct. Yeah. Because we're forcing structured reasoning rather than allowing it to give us its first fast guess. Yeah. We also want to give it examples. Do you like how somebody writes? Do you have a post that did really well on LinkedIn? Do you have a template that went down really well? Give it that. Here is an example of the tone I am aiming for. Showing is more reliable than describing, because describing is based on our understanding of the world. Yeah. And examples also allow the systems to calibrate fast. Yeah. I also need you to give it negative constraints. Tell it what not to do. Yeah. Do not use bullet points. Do not use corporate jargon. Do not exceed 200 words. Do not at any point give me a rocket emoji. Whatever you need it not to do, tell it, because it does not have a window into your expectation other than what you say to it. Yeah. Negative constraints are often more precise than positive instructions. Yeah. And I also want you to ask it for alternatives, because the first output is often actually an option among several, but you're getting the most probable outcome because you're allowing it to not work harder than that first response. So give me 3 different approaches to opening this presentation. I want you to get the range from it. Yeah. Combine the best elements rather than fixing one output. So now let's have a look at kind of Gemini and deep research. So when we're kind of looking at the capabilities of different platforms, there's different things that different kind of processes do well. Yeah. So when we kind of look at Gemini, if we want it to access the web and we want it to provide citations, we have to go to the tool that allows us to get that output from the system. So then we go into more tools and we go into deep research here. So what do we want to deep research? AI implementation processes for B2B. Yeah. Deep research is also a different way of spending tokenization, and it is not something it has on as default because it has to work harder. The system has to work harder. But what you can see is it is now pulling me direct information and researching different websites with specific citations. This also removes the potential for hallucination. It cannot guess or fill the gaps without proving to you where that information came from. So what it is doing is kind of telling me this is its plan. So it's going to research different types of websites, it's going to analyze the results, and then it's going to create me that report. I'm happy with that plan. Yeah, start the research. If I wasn't and I wanted to add in different aspects or different processes, I could edit the plan, but I'm happy. So I've clicked start research. So what it is now doing is accessing the internet. It is pulling it all through, but we can watch it. We can watch every single step so that when we get that output, we are confident in its use, in how it was created, in the purpose of it existing in the first place. Yeah. So what it is doing is it is just basically establishing various different aspects of the question I have asked it. It's doing all of this research in real time, so I don't have to. I don't have to go and read all of those things, because realistically, I just need the information, the synthesized information on how to move forward. It's now uncovering the information that leads to the report, which is directly linked to B2B AI implementation processes. Yeah. And then we basically can kind of just wait for it to generate the report. And you can leave the chat at any point with deep research in Gemini. You can't in other platforms, because it is basically accessing the internet through your connection to this page. So I'm going to let it carry on for a second while we kind of continue on with our quest through our session today. So there's some high value kind of use cases that you can kind of utilize if you are working beyond the default of platforms, of AI platforms. So for example, within marketing, if you set up a project space, you could always use that to create a brief development and copy review, for example. If your focus is on strategy, you could use deep research to do a competitive landscape synthesis. If you're in operations, you could have templates within a project space or a gem in Gemini, so that every time you do process documentation, it works it out in the same way. So there's like a flow through, not just aesthetically, but also use kind of wise. If we're looking at HR and leadership and development, you could create a Claude skill that every time you kind of do a job ad, it goes and checks so that it is the most optimal for your organization, for the expected kind of outputs that you kind of look for. We then have sales. So this could be where a project space takes your research notes or your kind of notes from the call and then creates a proposal section writing or a post call follow-up in the same template, the same process over and over again. So it's moving past the default, yeah, taking the next step in that kind of processing. Does that make sense when we're looking at kind of use of things moving forward? Yeah. I think it's quite interesting the way that we can kind of work through these different kind of processes. So let's just make sure we are sharing here. So how do you build it in? So instead of turning to it reactively, I want you to start planning. I want you to start thinking about where in your task flow AI can support, rather than just asking a question, because the platforms can do much more than that. So the goal isn't to use AI more, it's actually to use it deliberately. So what could you do before a task? Could you ask AI to prepare, to structure, to gather, to identify? What could you do during a task? Could it draft? Could it analyze? Could it stress test? Could it iterate? Could it check? And then after a task, could you do things like, AI, can you support me in documenting, communicating, and repurposing the output? Yeah. So where could you build it into your current flow? And as always, I always want to make sure that we're not moving too far into the other way of doing things, because there are some things that we need to watch out for. So we need to make sure that we're not falling foul of confident hallucinations. That often happens when we haven't given enough context, because the sole purpose of these platforms is to respond. Yeah, is to give you a output. And if it can't find the data, it will make up the data to complete that goal. We need to make sure that we are fulfilling data and privacy compliance, copyright and IP compliance. And also make sure that we are setting up like these skills, these gems, these custom voiced kind of processes, so we're not losing our voice. It is the correct tone. And what I also want you to recognize is that a well-structured output can feel authoritative. Yeah. Validate the reasoning, not just the format. AI cannot replace domain expertise, and do not always fall for speed over quality. So these are just some guardrails that we need to have as our own kind of compass when it comes to AI use and AI implementation. So some of the kind of prompt templates, examples that you can kind of utilize, if you're looking at analysis, this is the kind of way that you build out that prompt. So you are, review the following, identify the 3 most important findings, the key assumptions, and the most significant risk or gap. So I've just added these in so that when you kind of look back or you get access to the slides, you can just have a look at some examples of how you build out that prompting and that process. Yeah. So that I'm actually going to give you homework this week, because I want you to go away and do one of the following. Yeah. I either want you to go away and set up a Claude project. So open up Claude AI if you utilize this platform, create a project for your most common work context and write out those custom instructions and use it for one real task. Yeah. If you don't use Claude and you use Gemini, I want you to run a deep research query in Gemini. So pick a topic that you've been meaning to research, trigger that deep learning, that deep research aspect, and compare the output to what you would have produced manually or through the blank chat option. And I also want you to upload a document to Notebook LM. So take something that you need to get across quickly, a report, a transcript, or a brief, and ask it 3 questions and notice how it kind of creates those different kind of outputs for you, especially things like I just showed you the mind map that it created for me. You can do a lot more though. You can have an audio overview, flashcards if you wanted to. Just go and find different ways of synthesizing information incredibly quickly, because that is what AI is incredibly good at. So that is the end of our session today. But I just want to point out a resource by Anthropic. And this actually you can utilize regardless of what AI platform you are kind of using, when you kind of go through and look at how to communicate with AI. So this gives you kind of information on kind of how you kind of what web search actually is within AI tools, what vision means, so how does it understand and analyze. Yeah. And also it allows you to kind of understand kind of prompt caching, when you need to kind of reiterate your prompts. So it's just a great resource to be able to go through and kind of have a look and understand how to communicate in the best kind of ways with these kind of processes realistically. So I'll share this tab again. So has anyone got any more questions? I've tried to answer the ones that came through to me in this session, but has anyone got any other questions? Oh, it's not a problem, Mia. It's not a problem at all. I love doing these sessions. It's not a problem, Anita. Oh, interesting question, Shannon. When you use AI in reports and presentations, do you state that you've used AI to assist? Yes, you will need to moving forward. I think there's a weird shame that we feel that we've used AI to create or generate, but actually, due to GDPR and data processing, we are going to have to state when we have utilized AI to create and then we've used that output. Yeah. So yes, we're going to have to do that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so maybe they have to add in some custom instructions so that they kind of, or they explain their AI use. So it's used for synthesization, not generation. And where do you have what's the level of kind of, where do you draw the line with AI use? So is it just for synthesization or is it generation? And what does generation mean for your organization? Yeah, as you can tell, Shannon, I'm also a massive advocate for AI use. Perfect.
Okay. Um, That's if anyone else has more questions in the chat. Um, but yeah, as everyone said, Robyn, thank you so much. It's really insightful. And it's also actually quite helpful as well. I always like when you do the side by side comparisons as well, just to kind of, yeah, show the
It stops things
differences.
being isolated. We can actually start to see how they like do other things, right? Like it
Yeah,
starts to become, yeah, yeah.
no, for sure. So thank you. I was also just, writing some notes in there as well. So thank you so much for attending. If you do want to find out more about the courses we offer, then please do get in touch at inquiries@oxfordpeg.com. And I can sort of link this in the chat as well. And yeah, you can find out more about the other OxPE AI Exchange sessions as well on our website, on most of our websites, because we do have a lot of those at the moment. But I think that's everything for today. So thank you so much for joining. We hope you enjoyed it and we hope you found it interesting. And hopefully we'll hear from some of you soon. Again, thanks so much, Robyn, as
Not
always.
a problem. I look forward to seeing you back on our normal Monday.
Yes.
No,
Yes, actually, that is a thing. Usually they are on Mondays.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, yes. um, but
Perfect.
yeah, thank you so much and
Speak to you soon.
speak to you soon.